Have you ever wondered why some books change the world while others just collect dust? Why is it that certain words make people rise, build empires, change the course of history, while others fade into the background forgotten? There's a reason for that, because words, when spoken with truth and conviction, ignite something in people that is impossible to put out. Today, I want to talk about a book that has done exactly that. A book that has reshaped civilizations, built legacies, and inspired millions, yet remains one of the most misunderstood texts in history. The Quran. Now, before some of you shift uncomfortably in your seats, let's get one thing straight. This isn't about religion, and it's certainly not about trying to convince anyone of anything. This is about understanding power. The power of ideas, the power of discipline, the power of transformation, the power of a book that challenges you. There's something fascinating about the Quran. It doesn't just tell you things, it challenges you. It tells you to think, to reflect, to question the very fabric of your reality. And that's where the fear comes in, because people fear what makes them uncomfortable. They fear what shakes their worldview. And a book that tells you to wake up, take control of your life, and be accountable for your actions, that's terrifying for those who prefer excuses over responsibility. See, the Quran is not just a book of rules, it's a book of mindset. It talks about resilience in the face of struggle. It teaches emotional discipline when dealing with people. It emphasizes self-respect, purpose, and patience. Now tell me, how is that any different from the key principles of success, confidence, and strong relationships that we all strive for? Why they fear it now? Let's address the elephant in the room. Why do people fear it? Not because of what's inside it, but because of what they assume is inside it. Fear thrives in ignorance. When people don't understand something, they either reject it or villainize it. And history has proven time and time again that the easiest way to control people is to make them fear what they don't know. But here's the truth. Those who have actually read it, studied it, and understood its depth know that it's not a book of fear, it's a book of action. It tells you that you are capable of greatness, that your life has purpose, that your struggles are not meaningless, and that your character matters more than your circumstances. Lessons in leadership and relationships. Now, let's take a step back. Whether or not you've ever picked up a copy of the Quran, there's something you can take away from it. The idea that discipline and patience create greatness, that true strength comes from humility, not arrogance, that the way you treat people, especially those who can do nothing for you, defines your character. Sound familiar? Because these are the same principles that make someone a great leader, a great partner, and a great human being. Breaking the stereotypes. We live in a time where we have access to more knowledge than any generation before us, yet somehow people still choose to believe in stereotypes over seeking the truth for themselves. But here's what I want you to take away from this. If something scares you, learn about it. If something challenges you, lean into it. Because the moment you stop fearing something and start understanding it, you gain an incredible advantage over the world. Applying its teachings to your life now, whether you believe in it or not, there's one undeniable truth. The principles in this book can make you a better person. Imagine living every day with patience instead of frustration. Imagine facing challenges with resilience instead of defeat. Imagine holding yourself accountable instead of blaming the world for your problems. That's the kind of power that people fear, because it's the kind of power that changes everything. So here's my challenge to you. Don't let fear decide what you know. Seek wisdom, seek knowledge, and most importantly, seek to understand before you judge. Because the most powerful people in the world, they aren't the ones who fear books. They're the ones who read them. The power of words and influence, how words shape minds, societies, and personal transformation. Words are more than just a collection of letters strung together to communicate ideas. They are the foundation upon which entire civilizations have risen and fallen. Words shape the way we see the world, the way we understand ourselves, and the way we connect with others. A single phrase spoken with conviction, can ignite revolutions. A carefully chosen sentence can inspire generations, and yet, words are often taken for granted, thrown around carelessly, without recognition of their immense power to influence and transform. Think about the most impactful moments in your life. Chances are they were marked by words of encouragement that pushed you forward, words of criticism that made you question yourself, or words of wisdom that changed your perspective forever. Words have the ability to build confidence, instill hope, and spark motivation. But just as easily, they can plant seeds of doubt, create division, and reinforce fear. They can generate grief and fear. The power of words is not just in their meaning, but in how they are received and internalized. History is filled with examples of how words have shaped societies. Great leaders, philosophers, and thinkers have used language to move people toward action, to challenge the status quo, and to redefine what is possible. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't just fight for civil rights, he spoke them into existence with words that resonated across generations. His speeches weren't just statements, they were calls to action, reminders of human dignity, and blueprints for change. Similarly, leaders like Winston Churchill, Nelson Mandela, and Mahatma Gandhi wielded words as their most powerful weapons, proving that influence is not always about force, but about the ability to communicate a vision that others believe in. But words don't just shape nations, they shape individuals. Every person is a product of the words they've absorbed over time. The things you tell yourself, the things others tell you, and the stories you choose to believe about yourself all shape the way you navigate life. If you've ever been told that you're not good enough, that you'll never succeed, or that your dreams are unrealistic, you know firsthand how words can create invisible barriers that hold you back. But on the flip side, if you've been told that you have potential, that your efforts matter, and that your voice deserves to be heard, those words become the fuel that drives you forward. This is why personal transformation begins with language. The way you speak to yourself determines the kind of life you live. If your internal dialogue is filled with self-doubt and negativity, it becomes nearly impossible to take bold actions. But when you start speaking to yourself with encouragement, self-respect, and belief, everything changes. It's not just about positive thinking, it's about conditioning your mind to align with the person you want to become. Beyond the personal, words are the foundation of connection. The way we communicate with others determines the quality of our relationships. A single sentence can deepen trust or shatter it. The words we choose in moments of conflict can either resolve an issue or escalate it, and the words we use to express love, appreciation, and gratitude have the power to strengthen bonds that last a lifetime. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of words is how they transcend time. A book written centuries ago can still influence people today. A speech given in a moment of history can ripple across generations. The words of thinkers, poets, and philosophers continue to inspire long after their voices have faded. This is why books, speeches, and teachings have shaped the course of humanity, because words, when spoken with truth and conviction, are timeless. Understanding the power of words means recognizing that every conversation, every story, and every message you put out into the world has an impact. It means being intentional with what you say, knowing that words can either uplift or destroy, unite or divide, liberate or oppress. And it means recognizing that the words you choose today can shape the person you become tomorrow. A book that challenges and inspires. Why the Quran is not just a religious book, but a guide to discipline, mindset, and purpose. Some books entertain, some books inform. And then there are books that challenge you. Books that don't just sit quietly on your shelf, but demand your attention, your reflection, and your action. The Quran is one of those books. It is not just a religious text. It is a book that reshapes the way you think, the way you act, and the way you see the world. Many people assume that the Quran is simply a collection of religious commandments, a book of rituals meant only for spiritual devotion. But those who have truly studied it know that it is far more than that. It is a guide to discipline, a blueprint for mindset, and a map for finding purpose in life. It speaks to human psychology, self-mastery, resilience, and the power of intentional living. It doesn't just tell you what to do. It forces you to think about why you do what you do. One of the most striking aspects of the Quran is how it constantly calls on the reader to reflect. It doesn't just give answers, it asks questions. It repeatedly challenges you to think about the nature of your existence, your habits, and your choices. In a world where people are often looking for shortcuts, for someone to tell them exactly what to do, the Quran does the opposite. It demands that you engage with it. It asks you to observe the world, to study yourself, to recognize patterns in history, and to question the things you take for granted. This is what makes it a book of mindset. It trains you to move from passivity to intentionality. Many people go through life reacting rather than acting. They wait for circumstances to change, for opportunities to appear, for motivation to strike. But the Quran teaches that true change starts from within. It repeatedly emphasizes the idea that your external reality is a reflection of your internal state. If you want to transform your life, you must first transform your thinking. You must take ownership of your actions, your emotions, and your choices. Discipline is another core theme. We live in a time where distractions are endless and self-control is increasingly rare. People chase comfort, avoiding anything that requires effort or sacrifice. But the Quran constantly reminds you that discipline is the key to success in every area of life. Whether it's through fasting, prayer, or acts of patience, it instills the idea that greatness is not achieved through ease, but through consistency, commitment, and endurance. It teaches that self-control leads to freedom, because the person who can master themselves is the one who cannot be controlled by external circumstances. Beyond discipline and mindset, the Quran is also a guide to purpose. One of the biggest struggles people face is not knowing why they are here, what they are meant to do, or how to find meaning in their daily lives. The Quran addresses this directly, emphasizing that life is not random, that every action has significance, and that purpose is not something you find, it is something you create through service, contribution, and intention. It teaches that real fulfillment does not come from material success alone, but from aligning your life with values that are bigger than yourself. Perhaps what makes the Quran so unique is its timelessness. Unlike books that become outdated as society evolves, its principles remain relevant across generations. It doesn't just speak to one group of people or one era in history. It speaks to the universal struggles of being human. It acknowledges fear, doubt, and hardship, but also provides a framework for overcoming them. It doesn't offer an escape from challenges. It offers the tools to face them head on. This is why the Quran is more than just a book. It is an experience, a challenge, and an invitation to growth. It pushes you to question your habits, refine your character, and strive for something greater than comfort or complacency. It is a book that demands engagement, a book that does not simply inform but transforms. Why they fear it, the influence of misunderstood wisdom, and how fear often arises from ignorance. Fear is a fascinating thing. It has the power to stop people from exploring, from learning, from growing. But fear itself is rarely the problem, it's what lies beneath it. More often than not, fear comes from ignorance. People don't fear what they understand, they fear what they don't. And when it comes to the Quran, that fear is often rooted in misunderstanding rather than truth. Throughout history, societies have always been afraid of ideas they do not fully grasp. They have feared books, philosophies, and movements that challenge the status quo. It's easier to reject something than to examine it. It's easier to dismiss something than to understand it. And that is exactly what has happened with the Quran. For many people, their perception of it has been shaped not by first-hand knowledge, but by second-hand narratives. Narratives that are often misleading, incomplete, or entirely false. The Quran is not feared because of what it actually says. It is feared because of what people assume it says. If you ask most critics of the Quran whether they have read it cover to cover, the answer is often no. Their understanding comes from headlines, from media portrayals, from fragments taken out of context, and yet their opinions are formed with certainty. This is the dangerous nature of ignorance. It gives people the illusion of knowledge while keeping them in the dark. But why does this fear persist? One reason is that the Quran challenges deeply ingrained ways of thinking. It forces people to confront their beliefs, their habits, and their assumptions about life. And that can be uncomfortable. Many people are attached to their worldview, even if it limits them. The moment you introduce an idea that shakes that foundation, resistance kicks in. Rather than engaging with the new idea, people often reject it outright. It is a defense mechanism, a way of protecting what feels familiar, even at the cost of truth. Another reason for this fear is the power of words. The Quran is not just a book of ideas, it is a book that calls for action. It doesn't just offer passive advice, it commands change. It speaks about self-discipline, accountability, and purpose. It challenges people to take responsibility for their lives rather than blaming circumstances. And that kind of message can be threatening to those who prefer complacency over transformation. There is also the fear of losing control. Throughout history, knowledge has been controlled because of its power to liberate minds. Those in positions of power have often sought to suppress or discredit wisdom that empowers people to think for themselves. The Quran speaks directly to the individual, urging self-reflection and inner growth. It reminds people that true authority comes not from status or wealth, but from character and integrity. This disrupts traditional hierarchies and forces people to question authority. And that is precisely why those who benefit from ignorance have an interest in keeping people afraid of it. But perhaps the greatest fear of all is the fear of change. If people were to truly engage with the Quran's teachings, beyond the stereotypes and misconceptions, they might have to change their perspective. They might have to acknowledge truths that challenge their biases. They might have to question things they once accepted without hesitation, and change, even when it leads to something better, is always met with resistance. This is not unique to the Quran. It has happened with every major source of wisdom throughout history. Socrates was condemned for questioning established beliefs. Galileo was silenced for challenging the view of the universe. Every idea that disrupts existing narratives is met with fear before it is embraced with understanding. The Quran is no different. The more powerful an idea, the more resistance it faces. The more transformative a message, the more effort is made to suppress it. Because real wisdom doesn't just inform, it disrupts, it challenges, it transforms, and that is exactly why it is feared. Lessons in leadership and relationships, how the Quran teaches values that align with personal success and strong relationships. Leadership and relationships are at the core of human experience, whether it's leading a family, a team, a community, or even yourself. The principles of leadership shape the way we navigate life, and relationships, whether romantic, familial, professional, or social, determine the depth of our human connections. What many don't realize is that the Quran offers a timeless guide on both. It doesn't just provide moral instruction, it lays down practical principles that align with personal success and strong, meaningful relationships. At its core, leadership is about responsibility. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes the idea that true leadership isn't about control or power, it's about accountability. It teaches that the greatest leaders are those who serve, who act with humility, and who prioritize justice over personal gain. This is a powerful shift in perspective. Too often, leadership is seen as a position of authority, but the Quran flips that idea. It stresses that leadership is a duty, not a privilege. The best leaders are those who uplift others, make decisions with wisdom, and lead by example rather than by force. One of the most profound leadership lessons from the Quran is the importance of character. Intelligence, strategy, and skills are valuable, but without integrity, leadership crumbles. The Quran constantly reminds that honesty, patience, and consistency are what separate great leaders from those who merely hold titles. It teaches that leadership is not about seeking recognition, but about doing what is right even when no one is watching. This applies not just to political or organizational leadership, but to personal leadership. The ability to guide yourself with discipline, to make choices based on values rather than emotions, and to stay committed to long-term goals despite short-term challenges. But leadership is nothing without strong relationships. The Quran lays down essential principles for building and maintaining healthy connections, whether in marriage, friendships, or professional settings. One of the most emphasized values is respect. Relationships fall apart when respect is lost. The Quran stresses that respect must be mutual, whether between spouses, parents and children, or colleagues. It teaches that true respect isn't just about words, but about actions, about listening, understanding, and treating others with dignity, regardless of differences. Another key lesson is communication. The Quran repeatedly emphasizes the power of words, reminding Muhammad that what we say can either strengthen or destroy relationships. It advises speaking with kindness, avoiding unnecessary arguments, and choosing words that bring people together rather than divide them. It warns against backbiting, gossip, and harsh speech, recognizing that the way we communicate directly affects the trust and harmony in our relationships. Patience is another cornerstone of both leadership and relationships. No great leader succeeds without patience, and no strong relationship lasts without it. The Quran teaches that patience isn't just about waiting, it's about endurance, emotional control, and understanding that challenges are part of the process. In leadership, this means staying steady in difficult times, making decisions with a clear mind rather than reacting impulsively. In relationships, it means handling conflicts with wisdom rather than anger, giving people the space to grow, and recognizing that real connection takes time and effort. Forgiveness is also a recurring theme. Leadership requires the ability to move forward despite setbacks, and relationships require the ability to let go of resentment. The Quran highlights forgiveness as a strength, not a weakness. It teaches that holding on to grudges only harms the person who carries them, and that true power lies in the ability to forgive, learn, and grow. Another critical lesson is balance. The Quran encourages ambition, but warns against neglecting relationships for the sake of success. It promotes hard work, but emphasizes the importance of rest, connection, and emotional well-being. It teaches that success is not just about achieving goals, but about maintaining harmony in all aspects of life, between work and family, between ambition and gratitude, between leadership and humility. The Quran doesn't just offer theoretical ideals. It provides a blueprint for applying these principles in everyday life. It reminds us that leadership starts with self-discipline, that strong relationships require effort, and that success is not just about personal gain, but about the impact we have on others. The values it promotes, integrity, patience, respect, communication, and balance, are the very foundation of both personal and professional success. Breaking stereotypes, challenging misconceptions, and learning from wisdom instead of fearing its stereotypes are powerful. They shape perceptions, influence decisions, and often dictate how people interact with ideas they barely understand. But the problem with stereotypes is that they are built on assumption, not truth. They reduce complex realities into oversimplified narratives, making it easy to judge without ever seeking understanding. When it comes to the Quran, there are many stereotypes, many of them fueled by misinformation, selective narratives, and fear of the unknown. But the real question is, What happens when you look beyond the stereotype and engage with the wisdom instead of fearing it? Throughout history, anything that challenges the status quo has been met with resistance. People feared the printing press when it first emerged, worried that widespread access to knowledge would disrupt societal control. They feared scientific discoveries that challenge long-held beliefs. They feared philosophies that question traditional power structures. And in the same way, many have feared the Quran, not because of what it actually says, but because of what they've been told it says. Stereotypes about the Quran and its teachings come from fragmented interpretations, taken out of context and reshaped to fit pre-existing biases. Some assume it is a book of oppression, when in reality it is a book of liberation. Liberation from ignorance, from self-destruction, from limiting beliefs. Others assume it promotes division, when in truth, it constantly calls for unity, justice, and wisdom in human interactions. The issue is not the text itself, but the unwillingness to explore it beyond preconceived notions. One of the biggest stereotypes about wisdom, whether it comes from the Quran or any other profound source, is that it is restrictive. People assume that rules limit freedom, that discipline is a form of control, and that structure takes away personal choice. But in reality, the greatest form of freedom comes from self-discipline. The more control you have over your thoughts, emotions, and actions, the less control the world has over you. The Quran doesn't impose restriction for the sake of it. It offers guidance that leads to mastery over oneself. And yet, because people fear commitment and discipline, they label it as limiting rather than empowering. Another misconception is that wisdom is exclusive, that it belongs only to certain people, cultures, or traditions. But true wisdom is universal. The principles found in the Quran, self-reflection, gratitude, resilience, patience, and integrity, are not limited to one group of people. They are the same values that define success, strong relationships, and personal growth in any part of the world. Dismissing these lessons because of stereotypes is like rejecting a treasure chest because you don't like the language written on the lid. The real danger of stereotypes is that they prevent people from benefiting from wisdom that could transform their lives. When you choose to fear something instead of understanding it, you close yourself off from learning. You build walls around your mind, keeping out insights that could make you stronger, wiser, and more self-aware. And the irony is that the very things people fear in the Quran, its call for discipline, reflection, and purpose, are the things that lead to personal empowerment. Breaking stereotypes requires a shift in mindset. It requires the courage to question what you think you know. It demands engagement with the actual source instead of relying on second-hand opinions. It means recognizing that fear is often just ignorance in disguise, and that the only way to overcome it is through knowledge. The moment you stop seeing wisdom as a threat and start seeing it as an opportunity, you unlock a whole new level of growth. Because the truth is, wisdom doesn't demand blind belief. It invites curiosity, exploration, and deep understanding. And when you engage with it from that perspective, stereotypes crumble and real learning begins. Applying its teachings to life, how adopting principles of self-discipline, patience, and purpose can transform anyone's life. Success in life is not random. It is not something that happens by luck or by accident. It is a result of choices, daily, consistent choices that shape who you become. And at the core of those choices are three fundamental principles: self-discipline, patience, and purpose. These principles are not just abstract ideas. They are actionable strategies for transformation. The Quran, like many sources of profound wisdom, repeatedly emphasizes these values, not as rigid rules, but as keys to unlocking a more meaningful, successful, and fulfilling life. Self-discipline is the foundation of personal transformation. It is the ability to do what needs to be done even when you don't feel like doing it. It's the force that separates those who dream about success from those who actually achieve it. The Quran consistently highlights the importance of self-restraint, control over desires, and commitment to a greater goal. Whether in business, fitness, relationships, or spirituality, discipline determines how far you go. Many people struggle with discipline because they believe it restricts them. They see it as a limitation on their freedom. But in reality, the opposite is true. The more disciplined you are, the more control you have over your life. Without discipline, emotions dictate decisions, distractions steal time, and short-term comfort overrides long-term success. The Quran teaches that true freedom comes from mastering oneself, training the mind, the body, and the soul to align with what truly matters rather than what feels good in the moment. One of the most powerful examples of self-discipline is the ability to control one's words and actions. In moments of anger, frustration, or stress, it is easy to react impulsively, but the Quran emphasizes the power of measured responses, of pausing before speaking, of choosing kindness over retaliation, of remaining steady even when emotions are high. This kind of discipline doesn't just improve personal success, it strengthens relationships, builds trust, and earns respect from others. But self-discipline alone is not enough. Life is full of obstacles, delays, and unexpected setbacks. And that is where patience comes in. Patience is not just about waiting, it is about endurance. It is about staying committed when progress is slow, about trusting the process even when results are not immediate. The Quran constantly reinforces the idea that true success requires perseverance. Whether it's in career, health, or personal growth, the people who achieve the most are the ones who do not quit when things get difficult. The biggest misconception about patience is that it is passive, that it means sitting back and doing nothing. But real patience is active. It is the ability to keep going when others would give up. It is about maintaining faith in your efforts, even when there are no visible signs of progress. Whether it's working on a business, developing a skill, or improving a relationship, patience allows you to push through the uncomfortable phases of growth instead of abandoning the journey too soon. And then there is purpose. Without purpose, discipline feels like a burden, and patience feels like suffering. Purpose is what gives meaning to the effort. It is what makes challenges worth enduring and sacrifices worth making. The Quran repeatedly asks people to reflect on their purpose, to think beyond temporary distractions and focus on what truly matters. It reminds that life is not just about accumulation, but about contribution. Not just about personal success, but about making an impact. People who lack a clear sense of purpose often feel lost, unmotivated, or stuck in cycles of unfulfilling routines. But the moment you define your purpose, whether it's building a business that helps others, strengthening relationships that bring meaning to your life, or working on self-improvement, the daily effort becomes easier. Purpose fuels discipline. It gives patience a reason to exist. It turns ordinary tasks into steps towards something greater. When you combine self-discipline, patience, and purpose, life transforms. Obstacles no longer feel like reasons to quit. They become part of the journey. Success stops feeling like a distant dream and starts becoming an inevitable result of consistent action. These principles are not just teachings, they are the formula for a life of fulfillment, growth, and lasting achievement. When we strip away the misconceptions, the fear, and the stereotypes, what remains is wisdom. Wisdom that has the power to shape lives, strengthen relationships, and inspire personal transformation. The Quran is not just a book of religious teachings, it is a blueprint for self-discipline, patience, purpose, and leadership. It challenges us to think deeper, to act with intention, and to become the best versions of ourselves. True success, whether in personal growth, relationships, or leadership, comes down to the ability to master oneself. The principles found within the Quran align with what every high achiever, every strong leader, and every fulfilled individual understands. Self-discipline creates freedom, patience builds resilience, and purpose gives meaning to every effort. When applied to life, these lessons become more than words. They become a way of living, a path to transformation, and a guide to achieving not just success, but significance. The question is not whether wisdom exists. The question is whether we are willing to embrace it. Because in the end, those who seek understanding will always rise above those who choose to fear.